The Turnpike Bowl. Many of you may not understand what I mean by the Turnpike Bowl when I use it in posts and in this vlog. The Turnpike Bowl used to be the name given to the football game in the 70s and 80s between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Cleveland Browns. And of course, it was a interstate rivalry between the Browns and the Steelers. And, you could go from one game to the other simply by taking the Turnpike. And you go down the Turnpike, see the Cleveland and Steelers, go down the Turnpike, see the Browns and Pittsburgh. Okay, so there's a lot here in Cleveland that kind of reminds me of Pittsburgh. Certainly back in the day when the Turnpike Bowl was played on the Turnpike between Pittsburgh and Cleveland, and there was a connection between the two cities. Today, there still seems to be echoes of that connection. One is the steel mill over there that seems to be doing quite well. It's Alterio Steel or something like that. I posted it when I covered it's part of the Steel Yard Commons, I think it's called, the shopping area down there. They made it into a shopping area. But right next to the Home Depot is the Alterio steel mill. And believe me, somebody is working out there. Somebody is paying the rent, making ends meet here. Speaking of making ends meet, here's another thing that reminds me of Pittsburgh in the 80s, is this house kind of overlooking the steel mills, if you will. So often along Homestead, Braddock, you would have homes that kind of overlook the places where the men would work in the steel mills and pay for the houses that they would raise their families in. Such is the case with this house here. Okay, this is in Tremont. It's a suburb across the bridge, if you will, from Cleveland, downtown Cleveland. And this house you might recognize because it was made famous in a movie from the early 80s, late 70s. This is the Bumpus house, okay, from A Christmas Story. All right, and you can actually rent and stay in this, okay, if you will. This is part of a development they have here on Tremont. This is a Bumpus house. If you remember the dogs and stealing the meat and stuff from Ralphie's dad and chasing them down the street, well, that's the Bumpus house. And here we have the Christmas Story house itself, okay? The Christmas Story house, much like the Breaking Bad house that we saw in Albuquerque, outside Albuquerque, the Christmas Story house was used only for exteriors. They only used the outside of the house for the movie. All the shots that you see inside the house were made in Hollywood, I assume. But these exterior shots, as they call them, the outside of the house, were all shot here in Tremont, outside of downtown Cleveland. This is the Christmas Story house. A developer bought it a few years back, and knowing the worth of it, and kind of tidied it up, spruced it up, and now inside the house, unlike the Breaking Bad house, which is a privately owned place that the children somehow don't care for the neighbors that live there. I don't know what's going on with that. They were such neighbors to me when I was there. But yeah, a private developer bought this a few years back and turned the inside into a sort of museum, if you will, of the Christmas Story movie. Okay, there you see the sled. Okay, Ralphie's sled, and in the window there, yes, the famous lamp bought by old Dad to kind of bring a bit of cheer, a glow, if you will, to the house and the home. For Christmas. Dad doing what he can, making the best of it as neighbors and children run amok and knock their eyes out and stuff with guns and put on too many layers of clothing. In a movie that is a perennial favorite for many. Back in the days of the 70s and 80s, when the house was a home. Along the Turnpike between Pittsburgh and Cleveland.